Gore, when it was decided by the Supreme Court that Al Gore lost to George W. Bush, it was Al Gore in his role as Vice President of the United States who stood in that chamber on this day and certified the results.
Exactly. Well, let's turn now to Bill Muck. He is the chair of the Political Science Department at North Central College in Naperville. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here. I wish it was under better circumstances.
We all do. How surprising is this, that something like this would happen, something unprecedented like this would happen in our America?
It really is stunning, right? And although we should have seen the signs, but let's think about this in historical perspective. I mean, this is the first time in the country's history that our peaceful transfer of power has been disrupted by violence. Images today of the Confederate flag being paraded through the Capitol. I mean, these are things that have just never happened in the democracy before. So it's stunning. It's awful. I think it's going to cause a lot of reflection to look back on this presidency of Donald Trump and whether we should not have seen this coming.
Well, it looks like the storming of the Capitol, the demonstrators have now been repelled. But the question is, 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. And while certainly not all of them agree with the actions that unfolded today in the Capitol, how does Joe Biden move forward when you have such anger out there and an election that was as close as this one?
It's really difficult to do. The idea of coming up with legislation is almost seems too much, right? You have to begin with the process of healing the country. And it's hard to do that when there's such a divisive sense of us versus them, perpetrated by the president right now. I mean, I think we should be honest about that. I think what you have to do and how countries get over this is by governing, and good government. You start solving problems. You make it less about the politics, less about the rhetoric, and you actually start solving the average day-to-day problems. I think that has to be the hope, that coming in we can, the new government can address COVID, can start thinking about some of the economic challenges. I think that's what you have to do to start to move the conversation in a more productive direction, because the democracy is just in a very, very bad and dangerous place right now.
Bill, a lot of folks are saying, a lot of people who have a lot of money, a lot of unions are saying, you must invoke the 25th Amendment, which would be to take the president out, at least, for now. But there are only 2 more weeks left until he will be officially out. Is this just fool's gold saying that?
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of conversations going on right now, whether it's impeachment, whether it's censure, whether it's the 25th Amendment. One hopes that there is some political leadership on both sides of the aisle. And you've seen some of that from Republicans today pushing back against this, to say that this rhetoric is dangerous. And, for the last 4 years, President Trump has walked up to that line and, used dog whistles and used language. These words matter. Norms matter. And when you break those norms, it's not surprising every once in a while when you cross that line that others will do so. So, yeah, I think there should be some sort of accountability for this. I think if we think about or look at what the president said today in his speech, there was very little accountability there. The tweet that you just read, very little accountability. Still talking about he's being aggrieved and he's the victim and they've stolen this. That's not going to solve the problem. So I do hope that Congress as a whole thinks about finding a way to hold this president accountable.
Well, Bill, you're a political science professor, so let me ask you about the politics of this going forward. Usually when a candidate loses, the party self-interest takes over, right? And the party kind of moves to the next rising star, or you have folks who are coming out to say, oh, no, I'm going to take the reins. In this particular case, you've seen a lot of Republicans, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, and others say, no, we're standing with Donald Trump. What happens to the Republican Party after this display today?
This is a really wonderful question. I'm curious, what do we see tomorrow? Because going in today, there was a fracture within the party. There were the Mitch McConnells who were saying it's time to move on, to start create some distance between the president. And you're right, there were the Ted Cruzes that were all in on Trump. Will that same group be there tomorrow? When the Congress comes back to vote and to certify this election, do we still see objections? Or have we said we've gone too far and that we need to pull back? I don't know. This is really a fight for the soul of the Republican Party. And it's up to the Republicans to make that determination. There are a lot of supporters of Trump out there, but we'll see how it impacts all those perceptions.
Will they continue the certification process tonight? Will they go back, or will they try to start fresh tomorrow because of all that's gone on?
What you're hearing is that they're going to do everything they can to try to get back tonight. Now, I don't know if the security situation will allow that. Constitutionally, they need to get to this task. Now, I'm sure they could wait until tomorrow, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to come together tonight and address that. I think that would be good for the country, and I think it would be great if there were no objections. This process normally takes, 30 minutes to an hour to get done, so they easily could do that if they avoided all the objections and all the divisiveness that was going to take place today.
Bill, as we take a live picture now from Washington, D.C., where you can see police have certainly gained the upper hand.
This is the National Guard, I think.
Yeah, that front line is riot police. Yeah, they're in riot gear there. But you're right, Micah. There were some folks that appeared to be National Guard lining up just behind him. They have riot shields. They are enforcing the curfew. I think it's going to be very interesting, in the hours to come to find out how many arrests were made. Did they engage in mass arrests? Did they use a police tactic commonly known as kettling, which is basically cutting people off so they're not able to just kind of walk away after they've been repelled from the building?
Well, we know that a curfew is in effect, and we don't know if they're going to take these folks in or not. But Bill, if we can go just back a little bit to talk a little bit more about the political ramifications from this. We have seen where a lot of the Republicans, there's a faction that has been radicalized, as we've seen today. What will that do to the party moving forward?
Well, I think the party has to decide what direction they want to go. Is it the party of Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell, a more centrist type of Republican party, or is it this radical, more extremist party that we saw today, the Ted Cruz's? I imagine that Ted Cruz, or at least I hope he's having some serious questions tonight about his role in all of this.
Well, Bill, what does he get out of continuing to be a supporter of Trump, especially since Trump will be out January 20th?
I think the reality is that usually the party sets the agenda, or at least that used to be the case. And now what we see is that the public is doing this. So Trump has a direct connection with the public in a way that previous leaders didn't. So even out of office, he can still motivate those masses. And so January 20th, when Trump is gone, he's still going to have an influence on the process. And I don't think it's going to be a positive one. What we've seen over the last couple of weeks is essentially trying to burn the system down if it won't serve him. So what we're seeing out of Ted Cruz and others in Howley is do they want to be the heir to this party? I'm very scared by that future Republican Party. So one hopes that they can get a control of it, but that requires that the public come along with it. And if Trump can continue to mobilize his base in this more radical direction, it's going to be very, very difficult to have politics or government as usual.
We have seen a few Republicans, including Congressman Adam Kinzinger from our area and Senator Mitt Romney from Utah, in recent months, try to wrestle control of the party away from Donald Trump, and not in a way, maybe not wrestle the party away, but certainly point out issues they don't agree with more forcefully than other Republicans have. And now Mitt Romney, just in the last few minutes, is out with a statement. He calls this an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. And I just want to read you a bit of Mitt Romney's statement. He said, quote, "We gathered today due to a selfish man's injured pride and the outrage of his supporters whom he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and stirred to action this very morning. What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States." That statement from Republican Senator Mitt Romney, certainly no fan of Donald Trump. But even Mitt Romney on one of the Sunday shows a week or two ago admitted that his line of thinking is a pretty lonely viewpoint in the Republican Party. Do you think, Bill, that changes after today?
Well, I think Romney is right in everything that he said. Was it John Adams who said we're a government of laws, not people? But what's happened is that our government has become about Donald Trump. And that's a really, really dangerous place to be. Mitt Romney has been very lonely out there. There have been other senators who've been critical of Trump, and they've actually either been voted out or left, right? So do we see more movement towards the Romney Center? I would hope that today is a paradigm-changing event, that people look back and say, we can't continue this way anymore. Trump has just hijacked the political process, put so much venom and hatred and anger into it. I hope that there's a realization that this is a terrible long-term strategy for the Republican Party. I hope that's the case, but we will see. And a lot of this will come down to Donald Trump. How does he respond to this as well?
Yeah, Bill, you know the dynamics of politics. You know what makes people follow others. What can the president say to stop this insurrection today? Because he's put out several tweets, but they don't seem to be working because he continues to harp on the fact that this has been a fraudulent election.
Well, I think that's right. So he's tried to separate, to say that, storming the Capitol was wrong, but your anger over this election stolen is okay. And that's a fine line. I don't think that line exists anymore. I think the reality is that rhetoric that he has used, the lies that he has told, the way in which he has manufactured this narrative is the problem. So that's what has to go away. And as long as Trump continues to spread the conspiracy theories, as long as he continues to spread these lies, it's going to be very, very difficult to get his base to move away from that. I mean, he bears a tremendous amount of responsibility for the future of this democracy, whether it's going to be civil. I mean, you're hearing conversations today about civil war, and I don't think we're heading in that direction, but we are certainly seeing groups on the right who are much more open to using violence. And I mean, that's how democracies slowly crumble from within. We always think about democracies dying when militaries invade or there's a military coup, but the reality is that democracies are chipped away from within. And what we've seen today was another chip away of our democracy. And we should all be scared. Our democracy alarm bells should be going off.
Well, some say it's been chipping away for the last 4 years. But we told you that we heard from Congressman Mike Quigley. We also heard from Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. This is what he had to say to us today.